It was a quiet morning in Albuquerque, New Mexico, on May 29, 2024. The sun had not yet risen when 63-year-old Scott Habermael began his daily commute. A dedicated scientist, he was well known in his community for his passion for cycling. With 2 lights on the front of his bicycle and 2 more on the back, he took every precaution for his pre-dawn rides to work. But on this particular day, those precautions would not be enough. Along a familiar stretch of road in the city's northeast, tragedy struck with sudden and devastating force. A car slammed into him, ending his life in an instant, and leaving behind a scene of confusion and sorrow for the community he called home. When first responders arrived, they found a grim tableau. Scott Habermael's mangled bicycle and the scattered remains of his helmet were strewn across the pavement. The initial assessment pointed towards a tragic, yet not uncommon, hit-and-run accident. Investigators worked the scene, collecting what little evidence they could find. A short distance away, a stolen silver Hyundai sedan was discovered abandoned. The vehicle had damage consistent with the impact that killed Mr. Habermael, but offered few clues as to who had been behind the wheel. Surveillance footage from a nearby building captured the terrible sound of the crash, but the video was too grainy to be of any real use. With no witnesses and no clear leads to follow, the investigation stalled. The Albuquerque Police Department did what they could, but the trail went cold. For months, the case remained open but inactive, a painful question mark for a grieving family and a concerned community. In September 2024, the case was officially closed, filed away as an unsolved accident. It seemed that the person or people responsible for the death of Scott Habermael would never be brought to justice. His death was a sad statistic, another cyclist lost on the nation's roads, and the story appeared to have reached its final, heartbreaking chapter. The community remembered Scott Habermael as more than just a victim. He was a physicist, a husband, a friend, and an avid cyclist who embraced life with energy and kindness. His loss was felt deeply by those who knew him and by the wider cycling community, who saw his death as a stark reminder of the dangers they face every day. The initial belief that it was a simple accident, while tragic, was something people could almost comprehend. But the truth, hidden for months, was far more sinister than anyone could have possibly imagined at the time. The story was not over. It was merely waiting for a shocking revelation to bring it back into the light. The case that had been gathering dust for nearly a year was suddenly blown wide open in February 2025. An anonymous tip came into the Albuquerque Police Department, pointing them toward a place they had not thought to look. Social media. The tipster directed investigators to an Instagram account belonging to an 11-year-old boy. What they found there was chilling and undeniable. The account contained a video, filmed from the passenger seat of a moving car. It captured the final, terrifying moments of Scott Habermael's life. The footage showed the cyclist up ahead, and then the car deliberately swerving to strike him down. The case was instantly transformed from a tragic accident into a homicide investigation. The video was a horrifying window into the crime. It not only showed the deliberate nature of the act, but also revealed the faces and voices of those inside the car. The boy filming, then just 11 years old, was identified as Messiah Hayes. In the video, he could be seen waving a handgun from the passenger seat. Other voices could be heard, one of them egging the driver on, saying, "Just bump him, bro." This digital evidence provided the irrefutable proof that investigators had been missing. The crime was not a mistake. It was a calculated and cruel act, committed by a group of teenagers for reasons that defied understanding. The investigation quickly gained momentum as police delved deeper into the social media accounts of the suspects. The digital trail they left behind painted a disturbing picture of their lives, which seemed to revolve around crime and violence. The Instagram accounts contained other videos and posts that documented various thefts, discussions about stealing firearms, and references to gang activity. Another video recovered from Messiah's phone showed the teens after the crash, examining the blood on the hood of the stolen car. One of them could be heard saying, "Look where I hit her." Her whole face went boom, callously misgendering and mocking their victim. This shocking evidence turned the tide of the investigation. What was once a cold case became an active and urgent hunt for the young perpetrators. The video evidence was so clear and damning that it left no room for doubt about what had happened on that dark morning. The police now had names, faces, and a motive that seemed to be nothing more than a thrill-seeking impulse. The digital world, which the teens had used to broadcast their crimes, had ultimately become the very thing that would lead to their downfall and expose the terrible truth of their actions. With the video as their guide, investigators quickly identified the 4 juveniles who were inside the stolen Hyundai. The driver was identified as 13-year-old Jonathan Overbay. At the time of the incident, he was already on probation for a prior school break-in, suggesting a pattern of escalating delinquent behavior. It was his hands on the wheel that guided the car into Scott Habermehl, turning the vehicle into a weapon. His role was central to the commission of the crime, acting on the encouragement of his peers to commit an act with fatal and irreversible consequences. His youth made his actions all the more shocking to the public and to law enforcement. The front seat passenger who filmed the horrific event was 11-year-old Messiah Hayes. His Instagram account was the key that unlocked the entire case. The video showed him not as a passive observer, but as an active participant, brandishing a firearm and documenting the crime for social media. Further investigation revealed a deeply troubled history. By the age of 11, Hayes was already a suspect in multiple burglaries, gun crimes, and an alleged shooting. His involvement raised difficult questions about how a child so young could become entangled in such a violent criminal lifestyle, seemingly without any effective intervention from the authorities or social services. In the back seat of the car were 2 older teenagers, 15-year-old William Garcia and 15-year-old Elijah Engelking. Their voices were captured in the video, participating in the events that led to the crash. Engelking was identified by a teacher who recognized his voice saying, "Just bump him, bro," the chilling phrase that encouraged the driver to strike the cyclist. Garcia's social media also contained references to firearms and violence, indicating he was part of the same destructive peer group. When questioned, Engelking initially denied being in the car, but the evidence against him and the others was overwhelming, leading to their arrests in March 2025. The 4 teens, ranging in age from just 11 to 15, represented a spectrum of juvenile delinquency. Their collective actions on that day resulted in a man's death, a crime they seemed to treat as a game. The arrests sent a shockwave through Albuquerque as the community grappled with the reality that children were allegedly responsible for such a heartless and violent act. The focus of the case shifted from finding unknown assailants to understanding how these 4 specific boys could have committed murder, and what justice would look like for them and for the family of Scott Habermehl. The legal aftermath of the arrests highlighted the complexities and criticisms of New Mexico's juvenile justice system. For 13-year-old Jonathan Overbay, the driver, the path was relatively swift. He pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and received the maximum sentence available for a juvenile offender in the state. He will remain in a juvenile detention facility until he turns 21. While it provided a measure of accountability, this outcome meant he would be released back into society as a young man, having served a relatively short time for taking a life, a fact that many found unsettling. The cases for the other teens were more complicated. William Garcia and Elijah Engelking, both 15 at the time of the crime, were charged with first-degree murder. Given their age and the severity of the offense, their cases were moved to the adult court system, where they faced the possibility of much longer sentences if convicted. The most challenging case, however, was that of Messiah Hayes. Having just turned 12, he was officially charged with first-degree murder in July 2025. Under New Mexico law, he is too young to be charged as an adult, no matter how serious the crime. His case remains in the juvenile system, raising profound questions about accountability for a child so young. The case ignited a fierce debate among public officials about systemic failures. Bernalillo County District Attorney Sam Bregman described the state's juvenile justice system as being in shambles, citing a lack of early intervention and meaningful consequences for young offenders. Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham called the killing a heartbreaking reminder of the serious juvenile crime crisis and criticized the state legislature for failing to pass reforms. The case of Messiah Hayes in particular became a symbol of this breakdown, as he had an extensive criminal history before the murder, yet the system was unable to effectively intervene. This shocking case leaves society with more questions than answers. It forces us to confront the terrifying reality of serious youth crime and the systems that are failing to prevent it. How does a child become a murderer? Where does the responsibility lie with the individual, the family, or a society that fails to provide support and intervention? The defense for Hayes pointed to his troubled upbringing, while prosecutors pointed to a pattern of escalating violence. As the community mourns Scott Habermehl, it must also grapple with these difficult truths. Finding a path forward that delivers justice while also addressing the root causes of such tragedies remains one of the most urgent challenges of our time.